So today I would like to welcome and introduce Duane Silverstein from Seacology. Since 1999, Duane Silverstein has been the Executive Director of Seacology, an international non-governmental organization with the sole focus of preserving islands, their fragile habitats, vanishing species, and historic cultures throughout the globe. Before heading Seacology, Duane was instrumental in creating and heading the Goldman Environmental Prize, which has been dubbed the Nobel Prize of the Environment by National Geographic and news media around the globe. Over his career, he has visited more than 200 islands in 83 nations. Duane has met with presidents of the United States, secretaries general of the United Nations, kings, heads of state, and indigenous chiefs throughout the world on behalf of the environment. He has been awarded and honored for many impressive achievements, along with being an enjoyable and knowledgeable travel companion on our Wild Earth expeditions. How are you today, Duane? And thank you for joining us to talk about islands and the positive impacts of isolation and lockdown due to the novel coronavirus.
I'm great, and thank you for inviting me. I'm pleased to be with you.
So I have a couple of questions for you. My first one is, why is protecting the terrestrial and marine ecosystems of islands throughout the world so important?
In recorded history, the overwhelming majority of species extinctions on this planet have taken place on islands. And I'm not talking about 51% here. For example, 86% of all reptile extinctions, 88% of all bird extinctions have taken place on islands. Just to give you one or two little anecdotes about that, here I'm living in the United States, and in our country, we have one island state called Hawaii. And it represents 0.2% of the landmass of the United States and has been home to 72% of all our species extinctions in our recorded history. Let's go to your home, Australia. There's an island I'm sure you know about called Lord Howe Island in the Coral Sea. In recorded history, it has had more bird species and subspecies extinctions than Asia, Africa, and Europe combined. And for this is one reason why a prominent biologist from the Smithsonian Institute called what's happening on islands one of the swiftest and most profound biological catastrophes in the Earth's history. And that is exactly why Seacology was formed.
So how is Seacology connected to protecting islands?
To best explain Seacology, I'll go back to the founding on our very first project in Samoa. Dr. Paul Cox, an ethnobotanist, was studying the trees and the plants of a very remote village called Falealupo in western Samoa, trying to find cures for modern illnesses. While he was there, the earth-moving equipment came in and started cutting down a 30,000-acre pristine rainforest. And Paul speaks about 14 languages, including Samoan. So he ran to the chiefs and said, "What's happening?" And they explained to him that the government of Samoa told them if they didn't build a better school, this current school at the time was a ramshackle hut, that they would take away all the teachers and there'd be no education for their kids. And no matter what culture you come from, you really want your kids to be educated and have a terrific life. So they thought, and this is a barter economy, so their per capita annual income was less than $100 a year. There's no way they were going to raise the money for the school. So the only thing they could think of doing, much as to their dismay, was selling the logging rights to the rainforest to a logging company.
Oh.
And Dr. Cox said, "How about if we raise the money and build you the school? Would you then agree to kick the loggers off out of the forest?" And of course they said, "Of course we would." One problem: there was no we, and Paul Cox did not have any of the money. So he immediately, on the moment, formed an organization, which we now know as Seacology, went out, raised the money. Seacology provided the funding to build the schools. A chief from the village of Falealupo ran into the rainforest once the deal was set with a machete and told the loggers, "If you don't leave now, you will be dust of the earth."
Oh.
That's what I call conservation. So that's how Seacology was formed, and that is the backbone of our existence. We do these win-win deals where the local people, local islanders, get a tangible benefit they want and they request in exchange for starting a forest or marine or coral reef reserve, something like that. Uh, Perhaps I could tell you a little bit more about going over some other Seacology projects. First is in Sri Lanka, an island nation to the southeast of India. We worked with the government of Sri Lanka and an NGO called Sudisa to make this the world's first nation to protect all of its mangroves. Now, mangroves are very important because they sequester a lot more carbon than almost any other kind of ecosystem. And they also protect against damage caused by tsunamis and other quote unquote natural storms. The backbone of this project was working in all 1,500 villages that are adjacent to mangroves and giving women there microloans and job training in exchange for their commitment also to protect the mangroves of their community. It's been a big success. 12,000 women have received microloans and job training. They're expanding or creating their new businesses. The mangroves are indeed all protected. The Navy heard about it and they got involved and started planting and guarding mangrove nurseries. We opened the world's first mangrove museum in Sri Lanka. And the government liked it so much, they honored the museum and all the mangroves with a series of stamps. And then the Commonwealth of Nations heard about it and made Sri Lanka the chair of the Mangrove Best Practices Commission. And the United Nations honored this project and Seacology with a major award for its unique contribution to global warming. But I also know that much of the listeners to this podcast are travel enthusiasts. So I thought I'd illustrate or talk about one or two projects and my visits to them. So let's first go to Fiji. We give at Seacology what the village requests. We don't sit in an office in the U.S. saying, "Oh, we think you need this or that and the other." As long as it's not bad for the environment, we'll give it. So. What this mountainous village wanted was a system to bring fresh water from the river to the village. So the women, and it's almost always the women who this burden falls on, don't have to walk an hour each way each day, then come back with a pot of water on their head. And they also, and this surprised us at first, it turned out to be a popular request, they wanted their first ever environmentally correct flush toilets. So we didn't think okay, that's what they want. It makes sense. If we didn't have them, we'd want the same thing, I suppose. So that's what we provided in exchange for them protecting several hundred acres of rainforest. So we get to the village and they put on a great feast for us. They'd been cooking for a day or two and this and that and the other. And then we get to, they said, we want to take you on a tour to see the project you funded. Well, of course we're interested. So we go, and they were so proud of their toilets that they had garlanded them with flowers and all kinds of decorations. So the village is about, the whole village of several hundred people, about 7 or 8 feet, 3 meters away from me. And they asked me if I would cut, they had a ribbon in front of the door of the bathroom, if I'd cut the ribbon. So of course I did that. And then they said, would you do us the honors of inaugurating the toilet? So luckily I didn't have performance anxiety and I did my duty. And when I flushed the toilet, I was still inside this thing. The entire village breaking into applause. And the last story I'll tell is not a funny one, but we have a project. This is not one of the win-wins, but it's a way, if you're clever, you can really make a difference, not just on islands, but anywhere. And there are some islands in Ha Long Bay in northern Vietnam that are amongst the most beautiful places in the world. And they are home to one of the world's most endangered primate species called the cat ba, named after Cat Ba Island langur, of which at the time I can't remember, there were maybe 35 left. And there used to be thousands or whatever, but they were hunted down by poachers for two reasons. Uh, One being the Chinese medicinal market, ground
Mm,
spine of cat ball language, rumored to be, it doesn't really work or whatever. And the
mm,
other is exotic food restaurants near the Chinese border. And so we made an inquiry through a local NGO and local in Vietnam and said, what are these poachers earning? And they said $35 a month. So we said, how about we pay them double that to become guards of the langurs? So that's exactly what happened. And after
mm.
40 years of yearly annual declines in the population has started to come back. And I've met some of these guards now, and they much prefer, they didn't want to kill these animals, but they want
Yeah,
to feed their families. So we did that, and the one little travel story that goes with that, we wanted to see one, of course, of only 30 left in the world. And so we tried 3 days running, and that really is what finding wildlife is like in the real world. It's not like opening to page 17 of National Geographic. You got to
yeah.
put your time and homework in. 3 days in a row, we were shut out. Then the last night that they approached me and said, if you're willing to get up at 4 a.m., anybody is, at 4 a.m. to go, we'll try one more time. We know this interior island. It's a circular island. The middle is just a lagoon, but you can only get there like 2 hours a day, or else the tide is too high, and even in a little boat we can't get through. So nobody else was a taker, but I said, I came this far, I'll try it. And so it's pitch black when we leave, and a lightning storm just is striking left and right.
Mm,
And I'm a little scared, to tell you the truth. So we get to this island, and I could see that we just fit maybe with a few inches above our heads, where there was a rock opening arch. And so we get there, and the sun is coming up, and they said, we have 2 hours, and that's it. And an hour and a half, nothing. And then with about 30 minutes to go, we saw a family of langurs. So it was all worth it in the end.
oh,
But
wow.
that gives you an overview of how Seacology works. And just one or two quick things before I end this part is that we now have 326 projects in 62 countries. And a few years ago, Prince Albert II of Monaco, his foundation, and he in person, gave Seacology the award for being the most innovative NGO in the entire world in any field. And this year, I can't say this with a straight face, but this year we're also nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Not going to
Yeah.
win, I don't think, but still an honor to be
Well,
nominated.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What an incredible feat, and that definitely comes from, as you said, years and years of incredible adventures and projects, and really looking for unique opportunities to protect in every way you can. And that's so impressive. We at Wild Earth Expeditions just really love that about Seacology, and love being connected with you, even just on a travel and personal level.
Sure.
Why are conservation and COVID-19 connected, do you think?
Well, unfortunately, they are quite connected. That the things we, and I mean we, the human race, have done to nature are just incredible, and you just can't keep on doing this without paying a price. And that has become clearer and clearer in the case of global warming. And as I travel, and I'm sure you and Thomas have the same thing, boy, you just hear the same stories everywhere you go. My grandfather used to fish for 2 hours and then be more than enough to feed the village. Then my father, 4 hours and whatever. And now I'm out there 6 hours, and I catch 2 fish this size or whatever. And you also hear very commonly that, we used to have distinct seasons, and now it's unpredictable. It used to be you come in May or June, never going to rain. Now it rains, and who knows? And that's, of course, through climate change. And then the same way, by cutting down forests and by exposing ourselves more and more to otherwise wild animals, that leads to these kind of viruses, and in fact did lead to this one, as we know.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So what positive impacts on nature have Seacology's field staff been experiencing?
Yeah, I did ask our field representatives around the world to fill me in on that and give you a few examples. In the Dominican Republic, our field rep lives on the Samana Peninsula in the north, where you can go out and do some humpback whale watching. But she lives in a remote part, and she said that she felt that by and large the birds were gone, and she's been living there 10, 15 years and heard stories and all that, and she said it's unbelievable now. Not only have the birds come back, the chirping and the songs from morning to night. And it's not all happy news, though. She said, on the other hand, that is certainly the case, but now that the poachers know that there were no guards out there,
Yes.
she's worried about the future.
Yeah.
Our field representative in Peru lives in Lima, which is a very large, multi-million population city. And he reported that for the first time in ages, both dolphins and turtles are coming right to the shore. And again, we're talking about a $7 million, 7 million person population here. So that's been a change. In
Yeah, having
Fiji,
quiet and space on the beach. Yeah.
exactly. So they're
Birds are
not,
coming.
yeah, they're not bothered. And in Fiji, in Sabu Sabu Bay, our field rep sent us photos of pilot whales coming into the bay for the first time that she remembers. And Fiji, by the way, is doing something very interesting, because the government there has established several no-take reserves where you can't fish for X period of time, and that really has the fish come back and the corals rejuvenate much faster. And so what they've done with this COVID pandemic is, of course, they realize people are starving now. They can't go out and earn their living and then buy something at the market.
Yes.
So they've said for the government-sponsored marine reserves, local people can, for the first time in years, fish there, but only enough to eat. They can't sell any.
Yeah.
And the truth of the matter is, other conservation organizations, to the extent that anybody has a meaningful opinion, would say, "Oh no, that's not there. It's no take reserve." But Seacology's attitude has always been, you have to deal with the local people.
Yes.
It's not only just, it's the only thing that's going to work in the long term. So I think that actually makes a lot of sense. If the people can't eat, nobody's going to care about the environment in the end.
Yes. Yeah. And then there'll be also nobody there to protect it either.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What personal insight have you gained from living through COVID-19 pandemic that will shape how you live your daily life?
I think I've always been kind of a carpe diem, seize the day, type of person. But the one layer on top of that I've picked up from this is, don't take things for granted. I mean, if you would have asked me in January, hey, what do you think of the possibility of you're not going to a store, not going to a movie, not being able to have dinner with your kids, or at any restaurant or whatever, I'd say you're crazy. And now it just becomes so accepted here where I am in California. So I think I've really learned, and I hope the lesson carries forward, to not take things in your life for granted.
What are you most looking forward to doing as isolation and lockdown eases?
That's an easy one for me. Travel, and travel. I travel a lot for work, and I've had to cancel between work and personal trips 5 trips already because of the pandemic. And I was going to be a month ago in Guatemala and El Salvador checking out projects. I was going to be speaking at the Hay Festival in a remote part in Wales and all that. So I'm really looking forward to that a lot. And I guess a subset of that would be scuba diving. I'm a diver like you and Thomas are. And I think we just had perfect timing, because I led a trip to Palau in February, just as the things were unfurling. In fact, between going and coming on this trip, the outbreak in Korea broke out, and we had were scheduled at least to stop in Korea and change planes and all that. So we had to scramble around that. But so now all of us who were on that trip can think, thank goodness we did it when we could, because who knows when the next time we can travel will be.
Yeah, absolutely. Same for us, I must say.
Yeah.
Yeah, Thomas is itching and,
Yeah.
wiggling in the backyard, doing everything he can. He keeps on pressuring, oh, we should buy a camper van so we can travel around Australia. I said, you can't even, you can't get over the border, like there's nowhere to
Right. Good
go.
luck.
You're going to have to park it out in the paddock, pretend you're on a holiday. Right, well, thank you so
Well,
very much.
if I could, I'd like to add one other thing, and it combines two things we just discussed: the sentiment of not taking something for granted, and B, the love of travel. And I've had the great good fortune to be on some Wild Earth expedition trips, and they really are trips like no other. You really go behind the scenes, where possible you do it in great comfort. You and Thomas are just fantastic guides and all that. So I would urge listeners and viewers to not take this for granted, because I know through great management, Wild Earth is in a comparatively good shape right now. But if this travel lockdown continues for a long time, we will not have Wild Earth expeditions, and we'll say, why did we just take it for granted? So sign up for trips. Don't cancel them right now, and do what you can so that we will have Wild Earth available, so we can take trips and when this all calms down.
Oh, thank you. Really appreciate that. Yeah, Duane, it's been so great to chat with you. It's always a pleasure, and we've absolutely loved your stories, and thank you for sharing. We do
Okay.
also look very much forward to traveling with you too in the
Yes.
future.
Vice versa. Okay. Thanks so much, Natalia.